Chapter 10, it's good to be a man. It's good to be a man. Chapter 10 is gravitas through duty. Gravitas through duty. Now, Scripture describes virtues, duties, and traits that are integral to manhood. By focusing on these, you can more easily order your life around God to reflect His glory. There are three masculine virtues that Pastor Michael Foster calls out here. He calls out wisdom, that you are to grasp what is happening in your world and how to act accordingly to it. There's workmanship, which is your developed ability and the talents God has given you. And then there's just plain old strength. Plain old strength, your ability to work while bearing weight. Strength is manly. Being a workman, having workmanship, having a skill, a talent, that is manly. And having wisdom is manly as well. And James, the book of James tells us that, James chapter 1 verse 5 tells us that anyone who asks the Lord for wisdom says He will grant it willingly. Now, will you be the wisest man on earth? Probably not. But if you ask the Lord for wisdom, will He give it to you? Yes, He will. He promises to do that in His word. So Pastor Foster says if you combine these three virtues, you get the three masculine duties that show us what exercising dominion looks like. The first duty is envisioning and planning. That's where wisdom comes in. You can cast a vision and plan it out. Then in your workmanship, the second duty that comes out of workmanship is building and supplying. Building and supplying something. And then the third duty coming out of strength is guarding and fighting, which is strength guided by wisdom. He says when you combine these masculine virtues with these masculine duties, then you have one heck of a man. You've got a heck of a man there. And you will have gravitas then. Most likely. Now, not assuredly you'll have gravitas, right? But if you have those things, most likely you are going to have some gravitas, which we talked about in chapter 9. And he says women want this. Women, a good woman, a virtuous woman, not the harlot described in Proverbs, but the virtuous woman, they want this. They want a man who they can rely on, who is consistent, who is diligent, who has grit, who has strength. And if they have that, then they will be more likely to be happy and content. Now, what he leaves out is, which no pastor ever tells you, is that happy women are really hard to find. In fact, I don't think I even know any happy women. You know, Chris Rock makes a joke. Chris Rock makes a joke. He ain't never met a happy woman.
Like I said, try your best to make her happy. Try your best. But here's one thing nobody tells you. You can't make a woman happy. It's impossible. I've never met a happy woman in my life. Women always complaining about something. Women like to complain. Women save up to complain about. Oh, he don't even know I know. But I'm going to get this on next month. They like complaining. They love it. No matter what you do, your woman is mad at you.
Anyway, we're getting sidetracked here. Back to chapter 10. We're talking about men. Now, all right. Talking about men here. He says most women, this is true now. He says most women today are harried and they're anxious because their men don't have constance, diligence, grit, and just plain old gravitas. And it makes them nervous. It makes them nervous. That's true. That's true. That's true. I had a friend of mine. He's probably listening. But he told me that he doesn't think it's appropriate to tell your wife your problems or your big problems. You know, if you're afraid you're gonna get fired at your job or something, he's like, don't tell your wife that. Like, she doesn't need to know that, right? What's she gonna do about it anyway? Nothing. She's just gonna run around like her hair's on fire, screaming, crying, whatever, right? You don't need to tell her all these things, right? You know, there's an old saying. You probably learned it when you were in high school. What mama doesn't know doesn't hurt her, right? Now, this is kind of the same thing, just in a different way. You don't need to burden your wife with all these things that are going on in man world, okay? All the stuff going on in man world, she doesn't need to know about. That's why they're harried and anxious. There's all these men out here telling their wives too much stuff. You gotta say, hey, listen, when she says, how's your day go? You say, hey, it was all right. It was all right. That's all you need to know. You go talk to your boys. If you want to tell them about how bad the day was, go talk to your boys. Go talk to the men. They can handle it. The women, not so much. The women can't handle it so much. All right. I think that's what he's trying to say here. Have some gravitas. You don't need to be running around telling your wife everything going on. Oh boy, I'm scared. Oh boy, crying, whatever. Right. Don't even be doing all that stuff. It's not gonna make her happy anyway. Anyway, back to the chapter. God tells Joshua then to be strong. That's Joshua chapter 1. He says, be strong and be courageous. Right? That's what he tells Joshua. That's the same thing for us. Be strong and courageous. And don't be telling your woman everything about what's going on, all your problems, all that, crying, blah, blah. Don't do that. Dumb. Don't do that dumb stuff. Talk to your boys. If you don't have any boys, get some boys. Talk to them. Tell them about what's going on at work, what's going on with your boss, how he's a jerk, blah, blah, whatever. When the woman asks, tell her, hey, everything's good, baby. I got it under control. That's all you got to say. Okay, that's all you got to say. And if she gets mad, she's like, we don't talk. I want to talk. Let's talk, blah, blah. You don't have to tell her about your day. You say, well, how'd your day go? What's going on with you? How do you feel? How do you think and feel about these things? Blah, blah, blah. Listen, she'll be so happy to tell you all about all things, blah, 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 blah. She'll forget all about you not telling her about her day, right? She'll forget all about that stuff. She won't care. It wouldn't matter. All right, here. I'm just giving you some wisdom. I'm 40 years old. I got a little bit of wisdom here. I don't have it all, but I got a little bit. I know what's going on. All right. PostMilMan knows what's going on. Okay. All right. We got to wrap up chapter 10, though. He says, man, in the chapter, he says, man is the head and the brains of the operation. Men, they must become useful to society. Women just are. Women are just born. They just kind of come into being a woman. They don't have to become a woman. They just are. They just are what they are. Right? Men have to become a real man. You have to gain gravitas. You got to do things. You got to do hard things to be a man. Men are, I've heard one guy talk about, men are success objects and women are beauty objects. So if you want to be a real man, you got to have some kind of success in something, right? You can't just sit around, play video games in your parents' basement and eat Cheetos all day, right? You can't do that. If you want to be a real man and have gravitas, if you want to do that, you can't do it. He says, just to wrap up, there's 5 things to stop. Pastor Foster says 5 things to stop. He says, stop seeking praise. You don't need to be seeking praise from people. That's what kids do. Don't do that. Self-deprecation. Don't be self-deprecating. Don't joke around like that. That's not gravitas. It says stop complaining. Complaining, well, first off, it's a sin. Scripture calls out complaining as a sin. One thing I read, Marcus Aurelius, the great emperor of Rome, the great Stoic, he said, one of his quotes was, complaining is for slaves. I thought, wow, boy, that kind of hit you. Complaining is for slaves, right? So stop complaining. So stop making excuses. Stop making excuses. Own things. Take ownership of it. If something bad happens, say, yeah, it was on me. It's mine. I'm going to get it corrected, blah, blah. Stop making excuses. Don't you hate that? Like, man, the older I get, the more I hate people just making excuses all the time for stuff. Like, quit making excuses. Like, do something about it. Don't be telling, oh, blah, blah, blah. He says, don't break your promises. Don't break your promises. If you want to have gravitas, if you want to be a real man, make promises and keep your promises. There's a saying called, you're a man of your word. Notice there's no saying that says you're a woman of your word, right? There's no saying that says you're a woman of your word. It's only your man of your word. We value men for being men of their word. So don't break your promises. You need to be constant like a rock. Women, they can be emotional. They can be here or there and everywhere and everybody, oh yeah, that's just the way women are, blah, blah, blah. Men can't do that. Men can't do that. They got to be constant like the rock. And there's another rock I got to mention as a wrap up. His name is Christ. And Christ is winning. He is building his church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against that rock. Until next time, this is the Postmillennial Man.